the most powerful name in local news. This is the Fox 13 6 o'clock news.
Get back to you, Paul. Thank you. Now we have another dramatic episode we're following tonight. Florida's controversial stand your ground law. How far can you go to protect yourself under this law? We've had a couple of cases recently. We've got one now earlier this week in Polk County. A homeowner shot 2 teenage burglars accused of breaking into his house, and one of the teenagers died last night from those wounds. A Tampa man will use the stand your ground law as his defense in a trial later this month. He pulled a gun on some Plant High School students, including the son of the USF football coach, Skip Holtz. He fired 1 shot into the ground near the boys, and he says he was protecting his family when the teenagers showed up at his home, threatening his girlfriend's son.
Well, all these stories raise questions about when people can lawfully pull a gun. Fox 13's Lloyd Sowers found some answers.
Business is good at the gun range at Shoot Straight Tampa, where 90% of their customers buy guns not for hunting, but for protection.
Anytime you pull a firearm, you're changing 2 lives, yours and the person you're pulling it on. Whether it's a concealed weapon permit holder or somebody doing stand your ground, you should always use common sense.
In Polk County, a homeowner shoots 2 teenagers trying to break in. The teens weren't armed.
When you're woken from a dead sleep with a masked intruder, you don't have time to ask, how old are you? And are you dangerous? Because as a victim, if you do that, you'll be a dead victim.
And in Tampa, a man says 3 teenagers came to beat up his girlfriend's son, so he held them at gunpoint outside and then shot him to the ground when he says one of them came at him.
You need to give the court the exact language that you recall him using that night, too.
What are you gonna do, old man? You gonna shoot me? Are you gonna shoot me, old man?
Floridians were given wider latitude to use guns to defend themselves. The legislature passed the Stand Your Ground law in 2005.
The law says if you're in your home and someone breaks in, it doesn't matter whether they're armed or not. You have the right to shoot them. And the Stand Your Ground law says you can be anywhere. You have the right to be legally. And if someone threatens you with great bodily harm, you have no obligation to retreat. Under the law, you can shoot.
But these new cases are testing the details of the law. If you stand your ground with a gun outside your home,
you have to make sure that you are presented with great bodily harm. And if you're not, if someone's just coming at you and they're yelling at you or they're saying mean things to you, that is not a threat that you can use deadly force with.
And in the Polk County case, drugs were found in the home. And the Castle doctrine of the Stand Your Ground law doesn't apply if the home is being used for unlawful purposes. So while the law says you can stand your ground, be sure you're standing on firm legal ground before you pull the trigger. Lloyd Sowers, Fox 13 News.
In Clearwater, another case of a victim fighting back. Police say
from Fox 13, the most powerful name in local news. This is Good Day Tampa Bay.
All right, Jen, thank you. It is 9:01. This was a tragedy from the beginning, an argument at a community park between 2 men. It ends with the father dead, and now the other man is behind bars. Trevor Dooley, now charged with manslaughter. Detectives say on Sunday he shot 41-year-old David James in a neighborhood park in Valrico. They were arguing about a skateboarder. James' 8-year-old daughter saw the whole thing happen, and we're told the suspect is not cooperating with investigators right now. We got a lot of questions about this story. A lot of people are very upset about this. It's what everybody's talking about. Helping us to clear up some of this confusion is our legal analyst, attorney Matt Englett. Good to see you. Thanks for being with KEL. There's so much to talk about, and details are starting to emerge a little bit, and we can get to some of those in a minute. But one of the things that has come up is the Stand Your Ground law, and if this applies in this case.
Okay. Here's the way that works. If you have a weapon and somebody comes at you with force, and you reasonably believe that force is going to cause your death or great bodily harm, then you're allowed to take that weapon out and use it. That's not really what happened here so far, according to what the police have told us. What happened here was this Mr. Dooley actually went to the confrontation. He had the gun on his person. He had the gun holstered somehow. He went and had a verbal altercation with Mr. James.
Right.
And pulled out his gun. There was no bodily threat to him at that time. Pulled out his gun in an effort to defend himself. Mr. James lunged at Mr. Dooley. A struggle ensued, and Mr. James gets shot and killed.
So, when you say the stand your ground law does not apply here, now that's not to say the defense probably won't try and use it, but is it because he was not being threatened at the time?
Exactly. That is the key ingredient with the stand your ground law. You have to have force come at you, and it has to be great bodily force. In other words, he has to have some type of weapon, or he has to pose a threat that Mr. Dooley reasonably believed could kill him.
And one of the things that confused me about this is I thought that might have had to have happened on your private property, in your car or something. It doesn't necessarily with the stand your ground law, does it?
With the stand your ground law, if you're legally able to be in the place that you're at, and he was legally able to be at this basketball court, you're okay. But that's the key ingredient that we're missing here for him to escape this charge based on the stand your ground is there was no threat of bodily harm to him when he pulled that weapon out.
Okay. All right, we're going to leave it there, but we've got some other things to talk about with you at about 9:30. We're talking about GMAC and how it has foreclosed on some customers, and that may not be a good thing. We're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes. Annie.